Hey, Reddit. My name is Olivia, but my friends just call me Liv. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. It sounds boring, but trust me, when you look at financial reports for 14 hours a day, you see so many skeletons in closets that any detective would be jealous. I make about $220,000 a year plus bonuses. My job is chaos, stress, and hellish deadlines, but I love it. Because when I win a deal, I feel like a god. Caleb, my ex-husband, he's 36, an architect. We met at a charity event in Austin 12 years ago. I was a junior associate at a small firm, wearing cheap H&M blazers that wrinkled an hour after ironing. Caleb came with a friend who was my colleague. He walked up to me at the bar, ordered me a margarita, and said, "You have the saddest eyes I've ever seen." Who hurt you? Back then, I thought it was romantic. Now I realize it was just a polished pickup line. He was always looking for broken people so he could fix them. The first 3 years were heaven. We lived in his tiny one-bedroom apartment. I'd climb on him at night while he was drafting his projects, and he'd smudge my skirts with pencil graphite. In 2014, he proposed. Not on his knee in a restaurant, but in the park where we used to walk. He just turned, took out a box with a half-carat diamond, and said, "Come on, let's do it already. You're not going anywhere anyway." I said yes. We got married a year later. The wedding was modest, 60 people, barbecue at his parents' place in Houston. I wore a white dress I bought for $300 on sale. Caleb wore a rented tuxedo. We danced to a shitty country band, and I thought, this is it. My happiness. The first years of marriage were good. I climbed the career ladder and moved to a big firm. Caleb grew too. In 2017, he became a junior partner at Stark & Associates. We bought a house. Not the one we have now, but the first one, small, in a neighborhood that smelled like chips from the nearby snack bar. But it was ours. And then came the but. We wanted kids. I always wanted two. A boy and a girl. Caleb used to say, "Liv, you'll be the best mom, you have such organizational skills." We started trying in 2016. A year passed, nothing. 2 years, nothing. I went to the doctor. The diagnosis: unexplained infertility. Ovulation was fine, tubes were clear, Caleb's sperm analysis was excellent. But nothing happened. The doctor said, "Try IVF." We tried. First time in 2018. 2 embryos transferred. 2 weeks later, a negative test. I cried in the bathroom of his office while he was in a meeting. Second time in 2019. I lay on the table, pumped with hormones, mood swings so bad I cried over a broken spoon. Did Caleb support me? At first, yes. He drove me to procedures, held my hand. But by the second round, he started getting tired. He said, "Maybe we should just live for ourselves? Fly to the Maldives, buy a sports car?" Third time in 2020. COVID. Clinics were running with interruptions. They transferred 3 embryos. I lay like a starfish for 2 weeks, not getting up, afraid to sneeze. Caleb worked from home, brought me soup. But once, I overheard him on the phone with a friend. "Dude, it's hell. She's like a zombie, I haven't fucked her in 6 months, she's all hormones, and still no baby." I didn't leave the bedroom. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. Another negative test. We stopped trying. I fell into depression. I saw a psychologist, took antidepressants, gained 20 pounds. Caleb grew cold. He stopped touching me. We slept in the same bed, but there was a space between us like between Greenland and Iceland. He'd say, "You're still beautiful," but he wouldn't look me in the eyes. I thought he was ashamed of me. Now I realize. He was just bored. He needed a new toy. In February 2024, a new intern started at Caleb's firm. Her name was Mia Chen, 23 years old. Born in San Francisco, graduated from Columbia University in interior design. Her father, David Chen, was a major developer in California and an old friend of Caleb's senior partner, Rob Stark. Meaning Mia wasn't just any intern. She was daddy's little girl playing poor. I saw her for the first time at a corporate party in March. She was tall, thin, with black hair down to her waist and perfect skin. She wore Reformation blouses and heels she could have danced flamenco in. I was in my favorite black dress, which fit me like a sack of potatoes because I still hadn't lost that 20 pounds. Mia walked up to me with a glass of champagne and said, "You're Caleb's wife?" "Oh, he talks about you so much. He said you're a lawyer." That must be terribly boring, reading papers all day? I didn't pay attention to the word boring then. Now I look back and realize she already knew I was the problem. Caleb started staying late, first an hour, then 2. Then he'd come home when I was already asleep. He'd say, "The Manhattan Project, gotta finish the drawings." I believed him. Why? Because I was tired. Because I thought that since I couldn't give him a child, at least I wouldn't bother him. That was my biggest mistake. I turned into a doormat. In April, I found a gold hair clip with Swarovski crystals on the passenger seat of his BMW. I asked, "Whose is this?" He said, "Oh, that's Mia's. We gave the team a ride after a presentation. She's always losing her trinkets." I didn't raise an eyebrow. I put the clip on the hallway table. 2 days later, it was gone. Caleb probably threw it away. In May, we had sex. First time in 4 months. It was mechanical, no kisses on the lips. He came, turned to the wall, and said, "Good night." I lay there crying into my pillow so he wouldn't hear. In June, I accidentally, now I know, not accidentally, found his iPad in the kitchen. My phone had died, I was waiting for a client call, and I thought, I'll grab the tablet and check my email. The tablet was synced to his iCloud. I opened messages, and there, Reddit, was an entire archive. They'd been texting since February. 4 months. I sat down and read everything, like a TV series. Here are a few quotes that burned into my brain. "Mia, you look so sexy in that gray suit today. I want to take it off you with my teeth." Caleb, "Come to the material warehouse in an hour. I'll lock the door." Mia, "Does your wife know you don't come with her?" Caleb, "She doesn't ask. She just works and mopes." Mia, "Tell me you love me." Caleb, "I love you. You're my heir." Mia, "When are you leaving your boring bitch?" Caleb, "Soon. I need to figure out the house situation." He called me a boring bitch. The man I went through 3 rounds of IVF for, who held my hand when I was sick, who swore I was his only one, wrote that I was a boring bitch. I didn't cry. I took screenshots. All of them. 268 pages of messages. I emailed them to 3 different accounts. I deleted the download history. I sat down on the kitchen floor, leaned against the fridge, and stayed there for 2 hours. Then I got up, made tea, called my best friend Lindsay, and said, "He's cheating on me." Lindsay said, "I knew. For a while. I saw them hugging in the park 2 weeks ago, but I didn't want to hurt you." Some friend, right? I made my decision that same night. No drama. No screaming, "How could you?" No breaking dishes. I'm a lawyer. I know emotions kill cases. So I switched into liquidation mode. First, I hired a private investigator. Not from the yellow pages, but through an old FBI contact I'd worked with on a fraud case. His name was Steven Kowalski. He insisted I just call him Steve. Steve looked like a bulldog in glasses, bald, stocky, with a permanent toothpick in his mouth. But he was the best. I paid him a $15,000 retainer. He said, "In 2 weeks, you'll have everything, including what brand of toilet paper they use." While Steve worked, I went to a lawyer. Martha Jenkins, 58 years old, divorced twice, specializes in high-conflict divorce. Her office smelled like coffee and old paper. She looked at me, listened, took off her glasses, and said, "Liv, there are 2 paths. First, a classic divorce. You get half of everything, plus alimony for 3 years. Second, you destroy him. But for that, he has to sign a post-nuptial agreement under pressure. It's risky. Are you ready?" I said, "Martha, he called me a boring bitch after I went through 3 hormone storms for him. I want him sleeping in his car." Martha smiled. From that moment, we were friends. The plan was, gather undeniable proof of infidelity, photos, videos, location data, receipts. Freeze joint accounts so he couldn't drain them. Find dirt on his firm, because hitting his career hits his ego. Engineer a public scandal, but make me look like the victim and him the goat. In the finale, offer him a settlement where he gets the minimum, in exchange for me not exposing his financial fraud. In July, Steve sent me the first folder. There were photos that made my face burn. Caleb and Mia kissing outside her apartment. Caleb and Mia in the park, her sitting on his lap. Caleb entering her building at 6:45 p.m., leaving at 8:30 p.m. with his shirt untucked. But the best part was the receipts. Caleb had rented Mia a studio in downtown Austin for $1,800 a month. He paid for it from our joint account, The money set aside for home renovations. We had an agreement that any purchase over $500 had to be discussed. He didn't discuss. That was a breach of our marital agreement, a simple one, but it existed. I transferred my personal savings, about $230,000, to a separate account in a bank without his name. These were my bonuses from the last 3 years, titled in my name. Legal? Yes. Moral? I don't care. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to pretend I knew nothing. I made Caleb breakfast. I smiled at him. One Saturday morning, I brought him coffee in bed, kissed his forehead, and asked, "Honey, are you happy?" He said, "Yes, of course, sweetheart." I looked into his blue eyes and thought, "You're lying, and I'm going to prove it." At the same time, I started talking to Judy Stark, the wife of Caleb's boss, Rob. Judy was 20 years older than me, but we found common ground. She hated her husband for spending money on prostitutes and yachts, but she loved his money. I accidentally ran into her at the spa she went to every Thursday, thanks to Steve for the intel. We started talking. I complained about a difficult intern who's clinging to my husband. Judy snorted, "Oh, that Mia? She's sleeping with half the office. And with my husband, too, by the way." My jaw dropped. It turned out Mia wasn't just Caleb's mistress, she'd also slept with Rob at a conference in Miami. Caleb didn't know, or if he did, he didn't care. 3 days later, Judy sent me a folder full of documents. They were the firm's financial reports from the last 2 years. Rob and Caleb had signed contracts with a fake company for the supply of Italian marble. Real marble cost $400 per square meter, but the contract said $700. The difference, $300,000, went to offshore accounts. Caleb probably didn't invent the scheme, but he signed it. That made him an accessory to fraud. I hid those documents in a bank safety deposit box. That was my ace. In August, I decided to throw a party. Not to have fun, but to start the mechanism. This was my obsession. I told Caleb, "Honey, let's invite friends over for a barbecue." It's been so long. He was thrilled. He thought I was coming out of my depression. He invited his colleagues, including Mia. Yes, he invited her to our house, to our party. The party was on Saturday, August 17th. About 30 people showed up. I set the table, ordered catering, hired a bartender. I wore a light sundress and smiled at everyone. Mia arrived in a short red dress that cost more than my first car. She avoided me, but I noticed her kiss Caleb on the cheek when no one was looking. My plan was simple. I would leave my phone on the living room table with a notification from Steve visible on the screen. The notification read, "Steve, photos confirmed. Lawyer is ready with the lawsuit for misuse of funds and infidelity. Evidence attached. Awaiting your go." I went to the kitchen to get ice. When I came back, the phone was already in the hands of Melissa, Caleb's sister. Melissa, a 40-year-old woman who adored me and hated Mia. Loud enough for the whole living room to hear, she read the notification aloud. "What the hell? Liv, what is this?" Caleb snatched the phone. His face went so pale his freckles turned black. He looked at me. I was standing in the doorway with a bucket of ice, smiling. He whispered, "What have you done?" I replied, "Not me, Caleb. You fucked an intern with my money." The silence in the living room was so deep you could hear a fly buzzing in the salad. Mia tried to slip out the door, but Lindsay blocked her way. Lindsay said, "Sit down, sweetheart. Your turn." Caleb grabbed my elbow and pulled me into the garden. He was yelling. He said Mia meant nothing, that he loved only me, that it was a mistake. I listened. Then I asked, "Did you come inside her in that studio you paid for with our future child's money? Answer me." He went silent. Then he said, "You couldn't have kids, Liv. I wanted a child." That was the most painful slap. He'd hit me right where it hurt most. I said, "Your lawyer can talk to mine. Pack your things." The next day, I filed for divorce. Grounds: adultery, financial fraud, and emotional distress. But that wasn't enough. I hired a PR agent. Yes, a regular PR guy who works with politicians and celebrities. His name was Derek. For $5,000, he arranged a leak to 3 major local news pages and 1 architecture blog. The headlines read, "Prominent architect dumps wife who went through IVF for 23-year-old intern." Within 2 days, it went viral in Austin. The comments were brutal. People wrote, "Scumbag, piece of shit, hope he loses his job." Stark and Associates panicked. Major developers started calling and canceling contracts. They didn't need a scandal. Rob Stark called Caleb into his office and fired him. Caleb was a partner, but they kicked him out like a bad cat. Rob said, "You've brought reputational risk to the firm. We can't afford a toxic employee." Caleb tried to blackmail Rob with the marble story, but Rob said, "Try me. I'll destroy you faster than you can say, lawsuit." A week after the firing, Mia showed up at our house. She was hysterical. Red eyes, mascara streaming down her cheeks. She screamed, "You ruined my life. My father disowned me. He said I'm a disgrace to the family. I got fired." I opened the door, crossed my arms, and said, "Honey, you're 23. You ruined your own life when you decided that sleeping with a married man was a career move. And by the way, he told me you scream like a banshee during sex." Caleb never said that, but I wanted to finish her. She ran off, tripping on the step. Caleb moved out. He rented a dirty apartment on the outskirts that smelled like cats and weed. He couldn't afford a good lawyer because I'd frozen the accounts. His lawyer, some young pimply kid, tried to negotiate, but Martha was ruthless. She demanded the house, the car, 80% of the assets, and $100,000 in emotional damages. On September 3rd, around 11 p.m., I was sitting on the porch. I felt like a winner. I was drinking Jack Daniels straight from the bottle, looking at the stars. My phone rang. "Caleb." I declined. He called again. I declined. He texted, "Liv, please pick up. I'm at the hospital. Mia is dead." I thought it was some dirty trick. He was trying to make me feel sorry for him so I'd soften. I didn't answer. But an hour later, Judy called. Her voice was shaking. She said, "Turn on the news, Liv. Now." I turned on CNN. They were showing our neighborhood. And Mia's building. Or rather, what was left of it. Blackened walls, collapsed roof, fire trucks. The anchor said, "A gas explosion has occurred in an apartment building in Austin. A 23-year-old woman has died. Preliminary reports indicate a gas leak and a lit candle." The police questioned me the next day. Detective Brown, a stern man with a mustache, asked, "Did you threaten Miss Chen?" I said, "No. I told her she was a bad influence on my marriage." "That's not a threat." He asked about a suicide note. I didn't know about a note. It turned out Mia had left a note on her laptop. It said, "I can't go on anymore. Caleb left me, my father hates me, Liv humiliated me. I don't want to live in a world where no one wants me. And then, forgive me. And please let Caleb and Liv know that they killed me." I read that and threw up. Right on the police station floor. Because I didn't want her dead. I wanted her to be ashamed. I wanted her to suffer the consequences. But I didn't want her to die. Especially not like that, in fire, alone. The investigation concluded the explosion was an accident. She'd drunk a lot of wine and taken antidepressants, lit a scented candle to set the mood, and forgotten to turn off the gas in the kitchen. Her neighbor found her 3 hours after the blast. But the news didn't care about details. To the media, Caleb became the man who drove a girl to suicide. His name was linked to the tragedy. Even people who'd previously condemned me for my cruel divorce now wrote, "She was right to leave that monster." The divorce was finalized 2 months later. The judge ruled in my favor. I got the house, valued at $650,000, his BMW, $45,000, 70% of the marital assets, about $300,000, plus $80,000 in emotional damages. Caleb was left with the debt on his filthy apartment, a ruined reputation, and no architectural license. The review board opened a case on those marble contracts. I'd anonymously sent Judy's documents through a third party. His license was suspended for 3 years. Without a license, an architect is nothing. He tried to appeal, but he had no money. The last time I saw him was in the courthouse. He looked thinner, unshaven, in a wrinkled shirt. He looked at me and said, "You won. Enjoy it." I replied, "I already am." A year has passed. I moved to a new house. Not as big as ours, but mine. It smells like fresh paint and hope. I see a therapist once a week. We talk about guilt. Do I blame myself for Mia's death? Partially. If I hadn't thrown that party, if I hadn't hired the PR guy, maybe she'd still be alive. But my therapist says, "You didn't light the candle. You didn't leave the gas on. You didn't mix alcohol and pills. She did that herself." I'm trying to believe that. Caleb lives somewhere in Nevada, I've heard. He's working as a draftsman at some small firm for $40,000 a year. Recently, Melissa, his sister, texted me, "You ruined his life. I hope you're happy." I replied, "I didn't ruin anything. I just showed everyone who he really was." And then today, as I'm finishing this post, I received a letter. No return address. An envelope from New York. Inside, a clipping from the New York Times dated March 15, 2024. The Style Engagements section. An engagement announcement for Mia Chen and one Alexander Wang. The date of the engagement, February 1, 2024. 2 weeks before she started her internship at Caleb's firm. She was engaged. She was planning to marry someone else while sleeping with my husband. And her fiancé, this Alexander, either didn't know, or didn't care. I read that announcement 3 times. It said, Mia and Alex are thrilled to announce their engagement. A summer 2025 wedding is planned in San Francisco. The summer of 2025 never came for Mia. I'm sitting here, staring at this clipping, and I don't understand who was the victim, who was the villain, and who was just a fool. I thought Caleb destroyed our marriage for love. Turns out, he was just a toy in a spoiled girl's game before her wedding. And Mia died because her game went too far. I don't feel triumph. I feel emptiness. My revenge worked better than I planned. Too well. The price was too high. Thanks for reading. Take care of yourselves. And don't cheat on lawyers. We know how to wait and how to strike for sure. P.S. I'm going to close this laptop now, have another whiskey, and go to sleep. Tomorrow I have a date with a very nice man. He knows nothing about my past. I'm not ready to tell him yet. But maybe, someday. Update 2. I just got a notification. Someone reposted my story on Twitter, and it's gone viral. My Instagram is full of messages from strangers. Half say, "You're a hero," the other half say, "You're a monster." I'm turning off my phone. Good night, everyone.